on this episode of MythBusters.
Only in MythBusters is someone transferred on a stretcher to be dropped off a building.
Adam and Jamie jump on the myth of an inner spring fling.
That was just as much fun as it seemed like.
If a 3-story drop into shallow water is lethal, could you cushion the same fall with a mattress?
I feel like I just got spanked.
And live to leap another day.
I'm screwed.
Meanwhile, Carrie, Tori, and Grant
Time for battle.
put their boulders to the grindstone,
I like to call this a piece ballon de brick.
rocking the myth that 15th century cannoneers
I love that echo in the canyon.
fired stone cannonballs.
Wood.
Could they really do as much damage as metal and leave nothing for the enemy to fire back?
That is the most disturbing castle I've ever seen.
Who are the MythBusters? Adam Savage
It's scientific!
and Jamie Heineman.
Well, there's your problem.
Between them, more than 30 years of special effects experience. Together with Tori Belleci,
That was insane.
Carrie Byron,
Freaking confirmed.
and Grant Imahara.
Decapitation hazard, everybody.
They don't just tell the myths, they put them to the test.
Okay, so we're starting off with something a bit different.
That's right. We're starting off with an apology because it was during the filming of this episode that a cannonball accidentally went through someone's house.
Yeah, I mean, we take safety very seriously on our show. And despite a whole array of safety precautions at the bomb range, we had a major mishap.
A mishap where we're tremendously relieved that no one got hurt, but we're also tremendously sorry that it happened at all.
And with that, let's start our show.
Okay, so first up, a myth that's all about soft landings.
Playing with dolls again, are we?
No. I'm setting up a scenario.
For what?
All right, let me walk you through it. Picture yourself in a hotel room and you're in mortal danger because there's some guys banging on the door who want to shoot you. Now, you can't obviously leave through the normal means like the door. You've got to leave by jumping off your balcony. Unfortunately, your balcony, it's 35 feet above the ground. Fortunately, however, there's a swimming pool below you. Unfortunately, that swimming pool's only 4.5 feet deep.
That could get ugly.
Very ugly. This comes from the show Burn Notice, and what our hero is explaining to the audience as he throws a mattress out the window and into the pool, and then he jumps into the mattress to safety.
So the myth is that if you need to jump into a shallow pool from a height, you should throw a mattress down there first.
I couldn't have said it better myself.
According to this burn notice myth, there's no way you could leap and live after a 35-foot drop into shallow water. However, breaking your fall with a mattress could supposedly save your butt. So would a crash landing really leave you with more of a spring in your step than a splash landing?
So how do you want to test this?
Well, clearly the main thing here is to test what it's like to jump onto a mattress in a pool, but we need to compare that to what it would be like just jumping into the pool as well.
Yeah, indeed, and we're going to need a pool that's exactly 4.5 feet deep.
Well, let's get a crane and some dummies and attach some sensors to them and drop them off, see what happens.
That's perfect. Let's do it.
So it's straight to the shallow end at DeFremery Pool in Oakland.
That's a nice pool.
It ought to work.
Let's see if we can get Buster hurt.
Okay.
Where they'll hoist Buster up for this 3-story story.
Turns out one of the most difficult parts of this shoot is just getting the grate all into the pool area. It's a bit of a tight squeeze. This whole story comes down to if you have 35 feet to jump and you've got a pool below you that's only 4.5 feet deep, is it better to jump into the regular pool or onto a mattress floating in that pool? With all the drops that Buster's gonna do, we're gonna wanna make sure we know how hard he's dropping, and that's where this comes into play. This is an accelerometer, and just like a crash test dummy, I'm going to install this in Buster's chest to let us know how many G's he pulls on each of the surfaces we're dropping him on. Behold the guts of Buster. Recycled industrial plastic. That's just what I would have thought it would be. If I only had a heart.
With an accelerometer heart to track his impact,
Let's close him up.
the PVC man is ready for the drop.
Only in MythBusters is someone transferred on a stretcher to be dropped off a building.
However, first he needs to adopt the burn notice position.
Now in the show, our character states that properly distributing your weight, i.e. landing butt first onto a mattress on the water, is the safest way to jump into the pool.
So Buster will jump butt first. But there's one last thing to set up.
Now we want to get a really nice high-speed shot of Buster hitting the water, even under the water. But there's two problems with that. One is that the high-speed camera we have is insanely expensive, and so are underwater housings for it. So this is my quick shot build of a kind of water protector for the high-speed camera.
Yep, it's one he prepared earlier.
The camera sits in here.
And back at the pool, Adam's got the shot.
This gives us exactly the shot we want of both over the water and what's happening underneath. And the expensive high-speed camera stays dry.
But first up, Buster will take the plunge without a mattress. So what kind of damage will that drop do?
Here we go, Buster. Time to jump into the pool.
Okay, dropping Buster into the water from 35 feet. In 3, 2, 1, go.
That was just as much fun as it seemed like.
Buster took the fall, and his backside took a wallop from both the water and the bottom of the pool. But what does the data say?
So we dropped our dummy from 35 feet straight into the water, and we saw an initial impact of 50 Gs, followed by an impact along the bottom of the pool of 29 Gs. Now 50 Gs is our threshold for potential death. One way or another, you're not walking away from an impact like that.
Yep, there's no walking away from that. But how will it compare with the myth? Can the average mattress...
For our mattress test, we've chosen a standard inner spring mattress. That's this one right here.
really make a fatal flop survivable?
Perfect.
In theory, landing on a soft surface should maximize deceleration, dissipate impact over a longer time span, and reduce the risk of injury. But in practice, will a floating mattress prove soft enough to disperse the impact of Buster's fall from 35 feet?
Okay, 3, 2, 1, go. Nice.
X marks the spot. Buster hit with an audible impact. But did the mattress cushion his tush?
Buster's drop was perfect. And although he might not look like it, according to our accelerometer data, he is a frigging mess. He pulled 86 Gs hitting that mattress, roughly equivalent to a severe car accident. And that was supposed to be the safe jump. It's not looking very good for this story.
It's not looking good because that's a more damaging impact than onto water alone. However,
well, I love our accelerometer data from all these drops, but I can't help feeling like they're not giving us the full picture. I'd love in some way to be able to see what kind of injuries Buster might take from that kind of fall.
I know what you mean. And I might have just the thing.
next up, a myth on the rocks.
Okay, so our next myth is a great one that comes from the 15th century.
Awesome. What's the story?
Well, it's about cannons, or more specifically, about the cannonballs. So the European cannoneers of the time were reluctant to fire their cannons on the battlefield for two reasons.
Well, I guess one reason would be so they couldn't retrieve the cannonballs and fire them back.
So I guess the other reason could be that, cast iron was a pretty valuable commodity back then, so you could melt down the cannonballs and make your own cannons.
Exactly. So the myth is that instead of firing their cast iron cannonballs, they made their own cannonballs out of stone and fired them to have equivalent damage to the cast iron, yet explode on impact so they couldn't be sent back or melted down.
Interesting.
That is brilliant.
On the battlefields of 15th century Europe, some canny cannoneers didn't want to give the enemy any ammunition. So supposedly, they fashioned their cannon fodder out of rock. But would a stone cannonball really do as much damage as metal and explode on impact?
Okay, so ultimately, we're gonna have to build a castle of some kind and compare the damage done by cast iron and stone cannonballs.
Which means we're gonna have to make some stone cannonballs, but also we're gonna have to get a hold of a cannon.
Well, we do know somebody who has the perfect antique cannon. We can just call up Harry Webb and see if he'll let us use old Moses.
Yeah, but something tells me he's not gonna be too happy about us firing stone cannonballs through old Moses. What if we break it?
Well, we could use the small cannon that I built for the ball and chain prison escape.
Good idea, but we've never actually fired that at genuine battle speed, so maybe we use Old Moses to get the true firing speed of a cannonball, then we calibrate your cannon to match that and go from there.
Great.
Yep, before anyone casts the first stone, the MythBusters head to the bomb range.
We've safely fired our cannon several times on the show. We used it for the ball and chain myth. We've actually fired cheese from it.
But we've never actually had to fire anything at what you'd call battle speeds. So that's what we need to find out first. How fast does a steel cannonball travel from a real cannon? And once we know that, we can calibrate this cannon to match its speed.
But before any cannon calibration, they're pulling out all the stops to create a rock-solid barricade to stop the cannonball in its tracks.
That looks about perfect.
Meanwhile, Old Moses moseys up to the bomb range.
Wow.
Old Moses and the MythBusters go way back. In fact, you might say it's the cannon of choice when it comes to myth-busting. Making it the perfect cannon fodder to set the metal ball touchstone.
You normally use 6 horses for this.
I know it may seem like we're going through a lot of trouble, what with all the calibrations and the matching the speed and everything. I mean, why don't we just use this perfectly awesome cannon to fire our stones out of?
Right on target.
Well, the thing is, the stones could actually score the inside of this barrel, damaging it. And that is something we don't want to do.
Indeed, because Civil War-era cannons aren't easily replaced.
This is the setup. We're gonna fire a cannonball out of Old Moses. We're gonna catch it on a high speed. We're gonna use the scale to see how fast that cannonball is going, and then we're gonna match our cannonball to that same speed. Now, since these cannonballs are so important, we have to find it. So we have a cannonball catcher. We have 3 garbage cans filled with water in front of a concrete wall covered in bed liner. That should slow the cannonball down, and we'll be able to retrieve it.
Behind the wall, there's also a second line of barrels for optimum cannonball catching. And behind that, the ultimate safety stop, a dirt hillside.
1 pound of black powder.
So now it's over to Carrie to prep the powder.
Foil container to prevent sparks. 1 powerful burrito. Vent.
Vented.
1 pound of black powder is the battle standard for a cannon like Old Moses. And safely behind the blast-proof shields, it's the countdown to cannonball calibration.
Okay, this is Old Moses in 3, 2, 1.
Whoa! Wow.
That was energetic.
Wow.
See that beautiful array of water?
The red plume of water looked striking. And the ball catchers caught the cannonball.
So we've got 1, 2, 3 barrels.
Hey, here's the ball. Wow. All right, let's see how fast it was going. Right, there's the shot, and there's the ball.
What's the muzzle velocity?
1,200 feet per second.
All right.
Nice.
So that's the speed to match. And it's out with Old Moses and in with the MythBusters miniature cannon. Supposedly, a 3-story fall into 4.5 feet of water would get you off on the wrong foot. But if you landed on a floating mattress, could you escape unscathed? Well, so far, Buster took a lethal hit on the mattress and a survivable hit on water.
And that was supposed to be the safe jump. It's not looking very good for this story.
However, to definitively call this, they're going to dummy up something more lifelike.
Remember that I said I had something that was a little better than the dummies we'd been using? We do. Hey, Adam, check this out.
Oh! Yep, you may remember this disturbing face from the Halloween special.
Are you ready for the horror?
But its role as John Doe hid the Sindabber's real purpose.
To the window!
As an ultra-realistic human analog.
These are surgical training dummies. They're made muscle by muscle, and they're actually sutured in place.
Oh my God. I dare say that it's absolutely beautiful. This is medically accurate?
It is. It's made of a polymer. It's water-based, and everything is as realistic as modern technology can make it.
And its anatomy isn't the only thing that's realistic.
I wish you were here, because it's beautiful and it smells kind of bad, which you'd expect.
Yep, the Sindaver is the closest thing to a human you can get without, well, you get the idea.
Ever since we started doing MythBusters, whenever we wanted to assess the kind of damage the human body would take under the conditions we were putting it under, we've had to use either dead pigs or build rigs that assess the damage body part by body part. A foot, a hand, a head.
It's a delicious memory.
Until now. This thing, the Sindaver, opens up whole new vistas for us in terms of assessing physical damage from our experiments. I'm only just starting to grasp how awesome this is.
But before the Sindaver can take the plunge, Jamie needs to give it a skin. And this shrink wrapping also doubles as waterproofing.
Ready for market.
So with the Sindaver skinned up, it's time to drop it off at the pool.
You feeling ready, buddy? Now, normally we'd be using accelerometers to gather this data, but the Sindaver hopefully will give us some actual injury data about the various conditions under which we'll be dropping this bad boy into the water from 35 feet.
Yep, and that injury data is coming courtesy of this.
One of the nice things about using this particular type of dummy is that with the help of a portable X-ray machine like this device over here, we can actually figure out what happened internally to the dummy without performing the equivalent of an autopsy.
So after a checkup to make sure everything is where it should be,
You can see that the ribs come across. They're all intact. You can see all the cervical vertebra.
it's time to strap up the Sinbuster for its first fall into 4.5 feet of water.
Sindaver into the pool from 35 feet. In 3, 2, 1, go.
A perfect hit.
It's bottoms up for the new Buster. But what kind of damage did that drop do? Well, to find out, it's fished out for a closer examination by both the X-ray and an expert.
Now that we've dropped our dummy, we would really like to get an expert opinion on exactly how much damage they've sustained. And we'd like an expert that deals with this kind of injury every single day, and that's called an orthopedic surgeon. We found one named Dr. Noah Weiss. Dr. Weiss, are you willing to give us a free consult on Buster's injuries?
Sure, I'd be happy to.
Let's go take a look.
So one of the things that I noticed right away is that the pelvis appears to be unstable and opened up, which is not surprising considering the impact and be a major injury in a real person.
Well, that's understandable because that's where the dummy hit first, so that took the brunt of the blow.
The pelvis took the thrust of the impact, but the X-ray reveals a much more serious injury.
We can see over here is there's actually been a separation between the lumbar spine and the sacrum. This is a very severe injury that would most certainly result in major spinal cord damage.
Wow, so our dummy's paralyzed.
It's paralyzed.
So our Sindaver, after being dropped into the swimming pool without a mattress in its way, has sustained some very serious damage, a shattered pelvis and a paralyzing spine injury. And if it seems like I'm smiling, I'm only happy that we got some significant results from this dummy. Now, we're gonna drop one into a mattress.
In their previous test with the original Buster, the G-load of the drop onto a mattress was higher. But will that mean that Sinbuster 2 sustains more injury by making a bed and leaping into it?
Ready, Adam?
Ready!
3, 2, 1, go!
Perfect hit!
Buster hit the crash pad, and its butt took the brunt. So it's over to Dr. Weiss to find out if the Sinbuster's rear is in the clear.
On physical examination, what's immediately apparent is the pelvis is far more unstable compared to the previous Sindaver.
Really?
Yeah, this is completely disrupted.
Wow.
And that's not all. As the X-rays reveal, the mattress jumper sustained far more damage all over.
In addition to a similar injury where he basically blew apart his pelvis, this one also appears to have two injuries to his spine, one in the lumbar spine or low back and one in the mid-back or thoracic spine. He dislocated his knee, he dislocated his elbow, and the injury to the pelvis was much worse than in the first Sindaver.
So the mattress was far worse than falling into water.
I think both jumps were a problem, but it definitely appears to be much worse landing on the mattress in the water.
So he's even more dead.
He would be even more dead than the first one.
Is that a medical term?
It is now.
Okay. We have tested this thing 6 ways to Sunday, actually 4 ways and on weekdays, but we have found that yes, jumping from 35 feet is bad into water, but in the mattress, it's like twice as bad. This is a counterintuitive result, which for us is totally awesome.
Yep, both Buster and Sinbuster tell the same story. Despite what you'd expect, a mattress doesn't cushion a splash landing. It only makes it worse.
So where would you say this myth stands?
You know, it's on the tip of my tongue, but I can't quite, what is it, not right, not...
Truthful?
Ill-conceived?
Ill-conceived, improper, let's say just wrong.
Okay, it's wrong.
It's wrong.
But you know what bothers me is that people have actually been known to dive from that height into shallow water and survive.
I've been thinking about that, and I think what we could do is find someone who knows how to safely jump from those heights into shallow water and have them show us the method.
I think that'd be a good thing to know.
Let's do it.
Okay.
The myth is busted. But is there any way to get the drop on a fall into 4.5 feet of water? Between a rock and a hard place, supposedly some 15th century cannons fired rocks instead of iron, because not only did they do the same damage, they also broke up on impact. But before they get to the stone, first the MythBusters need to calibrate the mini cannon.
Time for the little guns.
Just like old Moses, the miniature cannon faces off against a full barrel safety system.
Gotta mix up a good batch.
But that's where the similarities end.
Okay, we know that Old Moses battle speed fires a cannonball traveling at 1,200 feet per second. So now that we know that, we can match our cannon to that speed.
Now, Old Moses used 1 pound of black powder to get the ball up to speed, but we're gonna need to increase that for our cannon. Why? Well, the barrel is shorter, which means the ball won't have as much time to accelerate, so we've got to give it a little bit more kick. To allow for that, we're going to use a bit more black powder to get us up to the 1,200 feet per second we're looking for.
Right, so the cannon is aimed at the ball catchers. The steel is loaded. And the fuse is lit.
Let's go.
Then it's back to the bunker.
All right, fuse is lit, ready for the calibration test. All right, let's see if Stubby can do it. Gonna be soon.
So that was the misfire that somehow sent our cannonball up and over the huge safety berm and into somebody's house.
Yeah, and when we realized that that had happened, we called off the experiment immediately to help out any way we could.
And first, that meant looking after the people whose property had been damaged. And we thought it was very important that we rebuild bridges with the local community as a whole.
And at that same time, our team was conducting an investigation to figure out what went wrong to prevent it from ever happening again in the future.
Believe me, it was an intense few months for everyone involved.
Yeah, you know, but once we started making progress on all of those things, the property, the community, the safety review, we wanted to move forward, and we started thinking about finishing off this myth.
Yeah, and first up was to find a new, more remote location.
And then Harry Webb decided that we could use Old Moses to fire our stone cannonballs after all.
Which meant the first thing up was to figure out what type of rock these cannonballs were even made out of. There's gotta be diamonds around here somewhere.
And for that rock research, Tori visited the California Academy of Sciences to talk to mineral maestro, geologist Peter Rootnerine.
All right, so Peter, we are testing the myth that cannoneers were making cannonballs out of stone for 2 reasons. One, it did the same damage as iron cannonballs, and when they hit their target, they would self-destruct, therefore the enemy could not fire them back. Do you think there's any validity in that?
Well, there could be. I think it would depend on exactly what kind of rock the cannonball was made out of and how hard and how heavy that rock was.
What would have been the 3 best types of stones that they could have used?
Well, I think sandstone would have been a common material. It was used for a lot of construction in various parts of Europe. It's very soft. It would be easy to work. I don't know how well a sandstone cannonball would survive being shot out of a cannon. They also would probably have used a lot of limestone. It's very hard, but also common and easy to work, and there would have been a lot of experience working this kind of sedimentary rock. Granite, on the other hand, is an igneous rock. It's not as common, but it's highly prized because of its strength. It's very dense. Would probably do a lot of damage.
Well, I guess we won't know until we make our own cannonballs and see how well they do.
Cool.
All right, now I have one question for you.
Yeah.
How much kryptonite do you have?
That's a secret.
Sandstone, limestone, and granite are the candidates. But will any have the combination of hardness and composition to be as effective as metal and break up on impact? Well, with each MythBuster working on a different rock, it's time for all 3 to put their boulders to the grindstone. Grant decides to carve his sandstone cannonball on the lathe, while Carrie needs a more aggressive tool to make an impression on her limestone.
Can I switch to sandstone, please?
But Tori has turned in the power tools for a super-powered tool.
Look at this thing. It's designed to polish concrete. Now that's what I'm talking about.
Even though the igneous granite is the hardest rock on the block, the concrete grinder soon has it beat.
I like to call this a piece ballon de brick. Well, I guess I should make another one.
Tori's leading the way, and it's not long before both Carrie and Grant have taken on the concrete polisher too.
Yeah, I really like working in TV. I think it's the glamour, the clothes. Makes me feel really pretty.
The problem is that unlike Tori's hard granite, Carrie's limestone isn't uniformly hard or soft.
So you go from really hard to really soft, easy to carve, hard to carve. There's holes all the way through it. There's crevices that actually just crack open, and if you drop it on the ground, entire pieces fall off to ruin your form. This is a very trial and error sort of thing I'm doing here.
And although the softest rock, the sandstone, is easier to carve, it has its drawbacks too.
The thing is, because it's so soft, it'll probably break on impact, but my question is it gonna survive the launch?
After a lot of hard work and hours of grinding, our cannonballs are done and they look great. We got a sandstone, we got a limestone, and we got a granite cannonball. Now all we need to do is load them into a real cannon, fire them at a castle wall, and see how they compare to an iron cannonball.
According to this myth, by using a mattress to break your fall, you could hit the sack and escape. But in reality, not so much.
He would be even more dead than the first one.
Is that a medical term?
It is now.
Having established that jumping off a 3-story building either directly into 4.5 feet of water or onto a mattress in that water is potentially lethal, it begs the question, what exactly would it take to jump safely from that height and into that depth of water?
So we've come here to the George F. Haynes International Swim Center in Santa Clara, California, where they have a magnificent pool and a platform that sits precisely 3 stories above that pool. And in a little while, Mr. James Franklin Heineman is going to find out what it would take to dive safely from this height. Better him than me.
Given that jumping off a height like that the wrong way into water could seriously hurt you, I'm not about to do anything fancy off of that without some training. Now, luckily, we've got just the guy to do that.
He taught us how to jump off of buildings. He's wrapped us in bubble wrap and thrown us off of buildings. That was intense. His name is Randy Lamb. He's a professional stuntman, and he is tasked today with taking Jamie right to the edge and throwing him off.
Throwing him off and ensuring that his plunge is less than the 4.5-foot depth of the myth. But first, what kind of depth does the average drop from 35 feet get?
really cool.
I'm screwed.
Randy's jump carried him about 2/3 the depth of the pool, about 12 or 13 feet. It's a lot farther than 4.5 feet, and I have to admit, I'm really curious to see what kind of form his shallow dive takes.
Well, that's what Jamie is about to find out.
So Randy, what are my options as far as flattening out quickly without hurting myself?
As you're coming down, you want to be right now in a very vertical position. Just as your feet touch the water, I want you to pull them in front of you. Keep your legs straight and pike right here, all right? This position here should scoop you up.
Okay.
All right?
It's a tactic that should slow Jamie down as he enters the water and make his angle of entry shallower.
And how did that feel?
Felt all right.
But with a 3-story dive into the mythical 4.5 feet to come, practice is going to make perfect. So cue the music. We're going to need a training montage.
Lay back, lay back. Nice.
If there's one thing we've learned in acquiring techniques to deal with dangerous situations like this one, is that you need to work your way up incrementally. I feel like I just got spanked. You can't just take instructions that as you're jumping, you're going through in your head, do this, now I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do this. It all happens so fast, it has to be automatic. And that's what I'm in the process of doing right now, is burning that in so that I don't even have to think about it.
Stay tight, stay tight. Nice.
So graceful, the Heinemann in the wild, isn't it?
And before long, Jamie has graduated to the 15-foot height.
He surveys the distance, estimates his trajectory, and he jumps. That was a really good one. Barely heard a sound. Nice work, sir.
Taking it drop by drop, Jamie's gotten his depth to 5.5 feet. And his technique is getting so good that soon...
That was your best one yet. I think you should move up and start practicing from a little bit higher to get comfortable up there.
All right.
It's clear that Jamie is really getting the feel for this. He's going to bump it up a level and try jumping from 22 feet. In fact, if you turn the camera around, you can see man contemplating the abyss.
Contemplating the abyss.
All right, here we go.
But amazingly, as Jamie's jump height increases, his depth decreases.
That was the best one yet.
It looked to me like he pretty much stayed just above the line.
Yeah, if anything, maybe went just a few inches below, but he's really getting it. As Jamie practices and moves to ever higher diving platforms, there's actually a quite interesting reason for which he might get better at decelerating faster as he goes higher. Water resists an impact in direct proportion to the speed of the impact. Cary, Grant, and Corey investigated this in their Water versus Concrete episode.
Belly flop,
And it definitely applies here. So while he did pretty good at 15 feet, he might be able to actually hit his target at 35. That one was fantastic. That was as good as your best jump from 15 feet.
Yeah, well, I mean, if that one was as good as I got from 15 feet, maybe I'll be able to do just as good from 35.
Yeah, exactly. Nothing to do but keep practicing.
And after a day of jumping in with both feet, that 35-foot fall will have to wait until tomorrow.
So, how you feeling after all that?
Ow.
Sorry about that.
All right, so now that we've finished sculpting our cannonballs, what's next?
Well, we load them in old Moses up, go to remote quarry, and start firing at castles.
Well, hang on, it's not gonna be quite that easy because all of our balls weigh different amounts and we need to compare the results. So we could either lock the variable of gunpowder, use the same amount of gunpowder for every ball, or we calibrate them and get them all to go at the same speed.
By adjusting the amount of gunpowder we use.
Exactly.
Well, I say we go with the latter technique of getting all the cannonballs traveling at the same speed is definitely gonna give us better data.
And out in the middle of nowhere, where better to put the rock cannonballs to the test than the home of stone?
We've come out to a quarry in Angels Camp so we can test the myth of the stone cannonball. It was said that these were not only as effective as iron cannonballs, but they exploded upon impact, which means they couldn't be fired back.
Here comes the cannon.
Look at old Moses, ready for action.
Lift.
Now, since we've never shot one of these stone cannonballs, we're gonna fire this cannon remotely. So what I'm doing right now is I'm rolling out 500 feet of wire so that we can launch this thing from behind this pile of rocks with an electric match.
And that's not the only precaution they're taking.
For our stone cannonball experiment, we have water barrels that are stacked 2 high, 3 deep. Behind that, a soft sand berm. And behind that, we are way out in the middle of nowhere in a rock quarry with walls that are 300 feet tall.
That's the setup. So now to calibrate their stone balls to the steel ball speed of their previous test.
All right, we need to test the speed of the stone cannonballs. So what do you say we start with the sandstone?
That sounds good. Now remember, we're trying to get 1,200 feet per second, just like the steel ball.
You guys, let me just point out, this is probably the first time in 400 years somebody has fired a stone cannonball.
This is gonna be cool.
Cool and tricky, since with 3 different masses, to get all the balls traveling at the same velocity, they're gonna need a formula.
So we need to know how much black powder to use to get our stone cannonballs to have the same velocity as the steel balls. Now when we plug in their weights to a basic formula based on kinetic energy, this is what we get. Our 1.3 pound sandstone ball needs 0.3 pounds of black powder. Now the 1.4 pound limestone ball needs just a little bit more with 0.33 pounds of black powder. And finally, our granite ball, which is 1.7 pounds, needs 0.36 pounds of black powder, just a little bit more than that.
That's the theory, but will those numbers work in practice? And will the cannonballs survive the launch? First up to find its black powder butter zone is the sandstone.
Okay, 0.3 of a pound, which is 5 ounces.
And to protect old Moses' barrel, the sandstone is packaged inside a cardboard canister.
We are loaded.
All right, let's see what sandstone is made of.
Sandstone.
What?
That's what it's made of.
All right, here we go. This is sandstone cannonball speed test. In 3, 2, 1.
Love that echo in the canyon.
Let's go see what it did.
All right.
Clearly, it rocked it.
We got our sandstone cannonball to fire at approximately 1,200 feet per second. Now that's the butter zone to match our steel cannonball. Now we're moving on to limestone.
According to the formula, it should take 1/3 of a pound to get the limestone flying.
Loaded.
All right, this is limestone speed test. In 3, 2, 1.
And not only did that have enough oomph to knock the gauge over, it was also enough oomph to match the steel cannonball speed.
So we managed to get our limestone cannonball to 1,200 feet per second. That means limestone is good to go for attack.
The final rock to take aim is the hardest and heaviest stone cannonball, the granite, which means it needs the most black powder.
Clear front.
All right, here we go. This is granite cannonball speed test. In 3, 2, 1. Hey, look, it's still intact.
And washed.
All right, let's check the high speed and see how fast it went. So we just fired the granite cannonball and we reached 1,159 feet per second. We are in the range that we're looking for. Now it's time to fire into a castle.
So all 3 balls are up to speed and ready to rock, just as soon as the MythBusters can find a castle.
That is the most disturbing castle I've ever seen.
Welcome back. We have been attempting to replicate a clip that purports to show a safe way of leaping from 35 feet into a 4.5-foot deep swimming pool. And we pretty much busted that outright.
So he'd be even more dead.
We are now investigating whether there is any technique at all that can help you safely make such a jump.
Yep, and yesterday, Jamie spent the day getting in touch with his inner aquatic mammal. But it's taken its toll.
I took a lot of jumps yesterday, and by the end of the day, I was in a lot of pain. This morning, I was still in a lot of pain. So I decided to call our orthopedic surgeon and see if there was anything I should be concerned about. And he said that, well, not really as far as the tissue damage or anything like that, but that is a warning sign that I'm taking a heck of a lot of impact in my lower back. And that's an area I really don't want to mess with. So I'm handing it over to our stunt guy, Randy.
Janie's back is telling him to back out. So cue the stuntman.
All right, Randy. It's all down to you, sir.
35 feet into 4.5.
Okay, sure. I wasn't supposed to jump right there.
I didn't think so.
Full marks for enthusiasm.
Full marks for enthusiasm. And it's clear from this impromptu plunge that he has the technique down. But this time it's for real, and it's a long way from the top with a very shallow landing. Will Randy jump and come up trumps?
All right, here goes the scoop in 3, 2, 1.
Wow. Dude, I think that might have been survivable. Hold on, let's check this out. Dude.
He would have survived that.
I think you're totally right. He would have survived that. He dipped a few inches below the line, but he's so decelerated. That's just a bump on the bottom. That's not an injury.
Yeah.
Randy's the man.
Yeah.
Randy's the man because he's gone one up on the myth. Not only did he take the fall from the same height into the same shallow depth, he made it out injury-free.
Randy, that was beautiful. How did it feel?
It's not as bad as I thought it was going to be, but I can understand why Jamie is tender today.
It's certainly not a painless way to land, but it sure beats a shattered pelvis and a broken spine.
Randy just successfully jumped shallow enough that he would have survived a 35-foot jump into 4.5-foot deep water. I have to admit, everything that we tested so far in this story, I was not given good odds for him being able to do that. But I guess 30 years of experience as a stuntman counts for something.
So how do you want to call this?
Well, as far as the clip we started with goes, everything that they described, either jumping into the pool straight or jumping into the pool with a mattress on top of it, is either super dangerous or even potentially lethal.
Yeah, it's busted. Not to say that it couldn't be done, though, at least if you've got decades of experience as a stunt person.
Exactly right. So, don't try this at home. We didn't.
My butt still hurts.
Castles. They're big, old, and made of stone. And while you'll find plenty in Europe, in the States, they're pretty rare. So the MythBusters are getting creatively medieval.
Here's how they keep the savages out.
And making their own.
Now, I know this might seem like overkill, having 2 pallets of solid concrete bricks, each of the bricks weighing 80 pounds, but it's not an exaggeration. An actual rampart of a castle, which is the barrier, has been known to be 6 feet to 18 feet thick. And what we have here is an 8-foot thickness. So this is gonna give us a good representation of what that rampart of the castle would be.
A great representation. And with the sturdy concrete ramparts in place, each MythBuster has a different idea on what constitutes a castle.
Lower the drawbridge! No, we will never surrender. Then we will attack! Don't worry, they're shooting rock cannonballs. I am not scared of those.
And that's what's going on in my head. Well, the whole thing was we're supposed to be building castles. Apparently, Carrie thought we were building floats.
Well, ultimately, they're all going to face destruction. But that doesn't mean the MythBusters have skimped on the decoration.
I went for more of a fairy tale sort of castle. You know, we're in this kind of grim quarry. I wanted to give it a little color. I think my princess gives us a lot of color.
So this is my castle. I decided to stay with the natural color of the brick. You know, I did a little aging. I got my drawbridge, and I got my own cannon, so I can fight back.
Here at Castle Crash Test, we don't fool around with a drawbridge or anything like that. We barely even have any windows. This thing is monolithic. It's impervious to attack.
That's 3 castles to face off against 3 stone cannonballs. But how will they know if the rock balls are as effective as a steel ball? Well, with an old Moses comparison for starters.
All right, here we go. This is control test. Steel cannonball with 1 pound of black powder in 3, 2, 1.
Oh!
There's no doubt that the metal cannonball jolted the concrete as it penetrated 2 layers and shattered 4 bricks.
That is one effective cannonball. Okay, let's see.
There's
it
the
is.
ball.
There it is.
All right, let's see how the stone cannonballs do.
Let's see why they use cannons.
Now that they've seen what steel can do, it's time to test this myth. Will the rocks match the metal and break up on impact? Well, first, they're starting with the sandstone.
Okay, ready, Harry?
Okay.
So next up is the sandstone cannonball versus Castle Buster. I gotta tell you, my hopes aren't high. Having made this one, this sandstone is really, really soft compared to the other two stones. I think this one might just shatter on the outside and not even cause any damage on the castle. But we'll see.
Grant's doubtful, but with enough black powder to fire the ball at the set speed of 1,200 feet per second,
Loaded.
the ball is in old Moses' court now.
This is sandstone versus the castle in 3, 2, 1.
Oh, that sounded like damage to me.
That was a
shot.
big boom. That's better than I thought.
Wow.
That's awesome.
That did some serious damage.
And it shattered, meaning there's nothing to send back.
Contrary to Grant's prediction, the sandstone did indeed score some damage before it shattered. But even though it penetrated one layer and damaged 2 bricks, the softer sandstone ball couldn't match the damage of the metal ball. So next, it's limestone versus Carrie's dream castle.
That is probably the most adorable castle I've ever seen.
Next up, we're gonna use the limestone ball against Carrie's castle. Now, looking at this ball, it's probably gonna do really well on damage, and it's so poor, it's got all these pockets. I think it's gonna shatter. I think this thing's gonna be great.
Good luck. In 3, 2, 1. That sounded like a really good damage test to me.
It certainly was, because the limestone was hard enough to destroy 3 bricks, closer to the damage the steel ball caused. And more importantly, it disintegrated on impact.
Look at that!
Oh my That works great! The limestone is incredible! Shattering.
You know, I'm a little upset that Carrie's cute castle with the giant orange princess is destroyed. But I mean, it was so worth it with these results. I mean, we destroyed a layer of brick and the ball crumbled. This is looking so good for our myth right now.
Looking good for the myth, but the final stone cannonball is the most rock-solid of all.
Time for battle.
The granite is a lot harder than the previous rocks, and while it may do some damage, the question is, will it shatter as the myth suggests?
Granite cannonball into the castle in 3, 2, 1.
That sounded like such a smack.
Sounds like success, man.
All right, let's see what it did.
Definitely scored in the damage category.
And look what's left of the cannonball. I mean, we did some serious damage, almost as much as the steel cannonball, and it disintegrated. Now, I've spent hours sculpting this cannonball, and a lot of effort went into building this castle, but I've never been happier seeing 2 things I've built destroyed, especially with these results. I mean, the granite cannonball did the same damage as the steel cannonball. However, the steel cannonball you could have shot back. The granite cannonball destroyed. This one's plausible.